The place stank of paint, gin, and cigarettes. Chaz was a heavy smoker, always craving A's in the red cardboard box, and you could see the yellow nicotine stains on his long fingers, even through the omnipresent blots of paint. I still have a little self-portrait he did that year. I watched him do it, in fact, entranced. A few minutes staring at himself in a dusty mirror of a Broadway saloon, and there he was, the pall of coarse black hair falling heavily over the broad forehead, the elegant straight nose, the long jaw, those remarkable large pale eyes. When I expressed appreciation, he ripped it out of his sketchbook and handed it to me. On that first afternoon, however, I woozily stood in front of his easel and caught my first sight of his work, which was a smallish painting of that naked girl done against an ochre background. Without thinking, I gasped and said it was terrific. "It's shit," he replied. "Oh, it's alive and all that, but overworked. Anyone can do a figure in oils. If you screw up, you just paint over it. And who cares if the paint is half an inch thick? The thing is to catch the life without trying, without any obvious working. Sprezzatura." He said the word lovingly, with a roll. I nodded sagely, since we were both being formed into little Renaissance mannequins by the Columbia Great Books program, and had both read Castiglione's Courtier, with its admonition to achieve excellent results without showing obvious effort. One was languid, therefore. One whipped out brilliant papers at the last minute. One despised the sweaty grinds in the pre-med program. I should mention here that Chaz rather set the tone of our little community, which was as aesthetic as all get out. The three of us were in the arts. Chaz painted, of course, and I was acting seriously at the time. I had some off-Broadway credits, in fact. And Mark had a Super 8 camera and was making short films of intense existential dreariness. In memory, it was a lovely era. Bad wine, worse marijuana, Monk on the record player, and an endless stream of lanky girls in black tights and heavy eye makeup with straight hair down to their butts. Strangely enough, it was something Chaz did that knocked me out of acting for good. This was at the start of junior year, and they had brought in a visiting professor, a real Broadway director who was mad for Beckett. We did a series of his plays, and I was Crap in Crap's last tape. Chaz went to all three performances, not, I think, to support me, for we sold out the Minor Latham Playhouse straight through, but because he was genuinely fascinated with the idea of taping one's whole life, of which more later. At the cast party, I got into a drunken argument with some frat boy gatecrashers, and there was a modest spasm of violence. The police were called, but Chaz hustled me out through the restaurant kitchen and back to our building. We sat in his room and we drank some more, vodka out of the bottle, I recall, and I talked and talked until I noticed that he was looking at me peculiarly, and I asked him what was wrong. He asked me whether I realized I was still in character, that I was using the querulous, middle-aged voice I had devised for Crap. I tried to laugh it off, but the realization generated a deadly chill that penetrated through the booze. In fact, this happened to me a lot. I would get into a character and not be able to get out, and now someone else knew about it too. I changed the subject, however, and drank even more sincerely until I passed out in Chaz's armchair, and awoke to dawn and the sharp stink of terps. Chaz had set up a large canvas, maybe 5 feet by 3, on his easel. He said, "Sit up, I want to paint you." I did so. He adjusted the pose and began to paint. He was at it all day until the light was gone, pausing only for the necessary toilet breaks and a Chinese meal delivered to the door. I should say that, although I had scrubbed the theatrical makeup off my face, I was still wearing powder in my hair, and my Crap costume of collarless white shirt, baggy dark trousers, and waistcoat with watch chain, and I'd grown a 3-day beard to add to the seedy effect. I believe I said, "Holy shit," when at last he allowed me to see what he'd done. I'd taken the obligatory History of Art survey course, and the apposite name popped into my head. "Jesus, Chaz, you're painting like Velázquez," I exclaimed, with a peculiar combination of feelings, astonishment and admiration at the feat of art, and an absolute horror of the image itself. There was Crap, with the impotent lust and malice playing on his face, and the little lights of incipient madness around the eyes. And beneath this mask, there was me, with all the stuff I thought I had successfully hidden from the world staring out, naked. It was like the picture of Dorian Gray in reverse. I had to make myself look and smile. Chaz regarded it over my shoulder and said, "Yeah, it's not bad. A little sprezzatura working in there, finally. And you're right, I can paint like Velázquez. I can paint like anybody except me." With that, he snatched up a brush and signed it with the black colophon he would use throughout his career, the CW, with a downward pothook drooping from the W to indicate it was Wilmot Jr. who'd done it. I have the thing still, rolled up in a cardboard tube on the top shelf of a storage closet in our house, never shown to anyone. A couple of days after he made the painting, I went to my advisor, dumped all my theater courses, and switched to pre-law. I should say here a little something more about myself, if only to frame, as it were, the story of Chaz Wilmot. My firm is one of those anonymous outfits denoted by 3 capital letters, and we specialize in ensuring the entertainment industry, broadly speaking, everything from rock concerts to film locations, theme parks, and so on. Still in showbiz after all, I like to say. We have offices in L.A. and London, and for about 20 years I was based out of town in those places. Currently, my domestic arrangements are ordinary in the extreme and related to my business life in a way, for I married my travel agent. Someone in my position necessarily spends a good deal of time on the phone with the person who arranges flights and hotels and so forth, and I developed an attachment to the voice on the phone, so helpful and accommodating at all hours, so unflappable in the many emergencies, blizzards, and so forth that afflict the traveling man. And I liked her voice. Diana is a Canadian, and I grew accustomed to those long vowels and the perky little "eh" she appended to her sentences. I found myself calling her number late at night with pretended routing changes, and then we dropped the pretense. We have been, I suppose, happily married, although we see little of one another except on vacations. We have the canonical 2 children, both now in college, and a comfortable house in Stamford. I am not rich, as wealth is calculated in these imperial times, but my company is both successful and generous. Chaz and I were fairly close up until our senior year, and then I went off to law school in Boston, and we lost touch. I saw him for about 20 minutes at our 15th college reunion when he walked off with my date. She was an arty type with a wonderful name, Charlotte Rothschild, and I seem to recall that they eventually got married, or lived together or something. As I say, we lost touch. Mark kept in touch, being a keep-in-touch kind of guy, active in alumni affairs, always a call for the annual contribution. He tried his hand as a screenwriter in Hollywood for a season, got nowhere, then got his parents to set him up in a downtown gallery when Soho was just taking off, and he flourished at it, but not before changing Slotsky to Slade. I got invitations to all the Mark Slade gallery openings, and we occasionally went to them. We didn't discuss Chaz much on those occasions, and I gathered that he was working as an artist with some success. Mark mainly likes to talk about himself, somewhat tediously if you want to know the truth, and in any case I'm not terribly interested in the art scene. I own only one original work of any distinction, curiously a painting by none other than C.P. Wilmot Sr. It's one of his wartime paintings, the crew of a gun tub on a carrier at Okinawa, the anti-aircraft cannons blazing away, and hanging in the air in front of them like a hideous insect is a kamikaze on fire. So close you can make out the pilot and the white band wrapped around his head. And there's nothing they can do about it. They're all going to die in the next few seconds. But the interesting thing about the picture is that one of the crew, a boy really, has turned away from the oncoming doom and is facing the viewer, hands outstretched and empty, with an expression on his face that is right out of Goya, or so I recall from my liberal education. In fact, the whole painting is Goyesque, a modern take on his famous The Shootings of May 3, 1808, with the kamikaze standing in for those faceless Napoleonic dragoons. The Navy didn't approve, nor did the magazines of the time, and the painting remained unsold. Thereafter, it seems, Wilmot was more careful to please. Chaz had it on the wall of his bedroom all through college, and when we were packing up just before we graduated, he gave it to me, casually, as if it were an old Led Zeppelin poster. As it happened, I had just flown into town the weekend Mark threw a party at the Carlisle Hotel to celebrate his coup in acquiring the painting that has become known as the Alba Venus. I'd followed the saga of the painting's discovery with more than my usual interest in things artistic, mainly because of Mark's involvement, but also because of the value of the object. They were quoting crazy figures for what it was expected to bring at auction. A couple of units at least. A unit being a movie mogul term I like to toss around for fun. It's $100 million. I find that sort of money very interesting, whatever its source. So I decided to stay at my firm's suite at the Omni for the evening and attend.